Oh my goodness, I've been hanging around all morning waiting for the weather to brighten up a bit so it doesn't look like I'm filming this video in the middle of the night. However, I have come to the conclusion that I don't think that's going to happen. I think it is just one of those British, dark, miserable, grim, cold, horrible days. So I hope it's nicer where you are. But hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I thought today we could circle back on a video topic that I'm constantly getting asked questions about, and that is the wonderful world of rare plants, or more unusual plants, should I say. And so today I've brought over 10 of my favourite more unusual houseplants that are also ones that I would deem fantastic for beginners. So if you're quite new to houseplants, but you're just looking to add something a little bit more unusual to your collection, or maybe you just want to dip a toe in the water, or maybe you just want to get something a little bit easier, hopefully these will be good recommendations for you. But first, if you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Yoli. I make videos all about houseplant care, sharing tips and tricks I've learnt over the years to help keep your plants happy and healthy. And yeah, so I really hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you find it useful. Let's get into it. Ironically, just as I've started filming, it has actually brightened up, so I'm kind of wishing I'd filmed it from the other way around now, but here we are. But as always, these plants are in no particular order, but the one I'm going to start with is one that is potentially my favourite plant at the moment. It's bringing me an unbelievable amount of joy, and I do apologise if I'm repeating myself. I know I can't stop talking about this one, but it is the Begonia Sinbad, and oh my goodness, just look at how gorgeous those leaves are. It's so kind of bluey silver, but there's also there's kind of a pinkiness to it. It's kind of pearly, I would say, in its colour. And if you watch my other videos, you'll know that I have never been a begonia person. In fact, I would say probably this time last year, I was almost actively anti-begonia. It's just never been a genus of plant that has particularly interested me. I've seen them in other people's collections and I've been like, yeah, they're fine. And it's just not one that I have really had any interest in growing. And I think as well, because there are certain types of begonia that can be quite difficult to care for. Like there's some that do require like very, very high levels of humidity, like terrarium conditions. And I don't know if I just was put off thinking that they'd be really difficult and not worth the fuss. I don't really know what it is. But anyway, I didn't set out to buy this one. I was actually on Etsy looking for cuttings of a completely different plant, stumbled across this one about 5 months ago, and I was like, oh, I was like, that's interesting. And so I ordered it, got it as a little cutting, and I just fell in love with it. So then I was like, right, I'm gonna go the biggest plant possible. And that was only, as I say, about 4 or 5 months ago. And as you can see, it has become already a really lovely big full plant. And I have chopped it back several times. I've given cuttings to friends, and it's just been an absolute walk in the park. So this one, when I first got it, was living just here behind me before I had this grow bar here. So that was actually quite, I would say like on the upper end of low light spots. And now I've got it growing under my Sansi grow lights, and every single place that I've grown this plant has been fine for it, and I haven't found it's massively affected its rate of growth. So it's just a really versatile, adaptable plant. The one thing I'll say with begonias is that they've got quite thin foliage, so make sure you don't have them like right up against a grow light or in direct sunlight or anything like that, because they can burn quite easily. But this one, as I say, I've got it in, that I'll put a clip in of the spot I've got it in now, but I do very little to keep this plant happy. As you can see, I am growing it in no drainage, and this is the way that I'm actually growing a lot of my begonias now, because I found it just keeps them really, really happy. I've got a layer of semi-hydro at the bottom there, and then I've got soil on top, just like this. And I know quite a lot of you have been saying, why are you not doing pure semi-hydro? Why are you doing it like this? And to be completely honest, the answer is, I don't have like a very clear answer apart from it's just kind of like a gut feeling. I have got some begonias growing in pure semi-hydro, and I just find it easier. I think because they've got quite a spindly root system, I firstly find it easier to monitor the roots of certain plants when I can actually see them in soil. But also I don't need to worry quite so much about like high levels of fertilization and stuff like that, because obviously there is nutrients in the soil. So I don't know, I just am enjoying growing in this way and I'm finding it's working really, really well. So yeah, this is a plant that I 100% wish I'd known about sooner, and when I was first starting to get into more unusual plants, this is one that I feel like would have been such a good shout, because it is so rewarding without you having to do too much to it. The one thing I'll say, as I will with lots and lots and lots of these plants, is that if you are new to just plants in general, do be careful of overwatering, particularly in the way that I'm growing here, although obviously you can monitor the reservoir. If you fill that too high, then you're going to risk your plant developing things like root rot and stuff like that. So slow and steady, if anything, under as opposed to overwater. But yeah, it's a really awesome one, and I just want to kind of preach about it. Whenever I find a plant that I love growing, as you guys know, I get obsessed quite easily, and I will go through phases of just like talking about a plant that I'm currently obsessed with, but I just want to share it because it's so much fun, and that is one that I'm just loving growing. So yes. And then you might be surprised to see this next one on the list, because this next one is actually an Alocasia, and typically Alocasias have a reputation of being quite difficult, kind of finicky plants, and definitely not the type of plants that you would suggest for a beginner. But this is the Alocasia Bisma Silver, and as you can see, again, it's absolutely beautiful. It's also got that kind of silvery, I mean, it's in the name, but kind of silvery undertone to its leaves with that beautiful veination. And this is such, in my experience, such a hardy Alocasia if you grow it in the right way. And this one gives me no grief at all, touch wood, and honestly is one of my most low maintenance plants at the moment, hence why it's on this list. So I've got mine growing just behind me there in one of my window shelves. So it does get, I would say, bright indirect light. It's not a spot that gets any direct sun. However, this is a plant that probably could tolerate some direct sun. And I've got it growing in semi-hydro. And in fact, I've said it before, I find semi-hydro growing for Alocasias like the way forward. It makes your life so much easier. It's so much easier to kind of, I don't know, gauge the plant and where it's at and detect issues and avoid root rot. So my personal advice for this plant, in order to keep things as easy as possible, would be to grow it in semi-hydro. But I think because of the texture of the leaves of this plant, like they're really thick and kind of rubbery, I found it's one that is really not susceptible to pests. It has been, in the time of me owning it, it has been around other plants that have had pests, and this has been one that has just never been affected. It's also one that is very, very, very quick to grow and very quick to size up. Like the leaves it's giving me now are so stunning. And I think when I first started getting into Alocasias, I think the first one that I got, I think I'm right in saying, was something like the Mitchellitziana, the one that's commonly known as the Friedeck. And although that is a beautiful Alocasia, and once you get the hang of it, it's actually quite an easy plant, I think I gave myself a bit of a hard time with Alocasias at first, because I was like, oh no, why is everything going wrong? Why can't I figure this plant out? Whereas I think if I'd gone with something like this, I might have had a much more positive experience with Alocasia straight off the bat. The other really good thing about this one is that I haven't found it requires any special levels of humidity in order to keep it happy. I don't have this one close to my humidifier. It very much lives in just kind of standard room conditions, and it just seems, as I say, much hardier than a lot of other Alocasias. So it's just a great plant to start with, and just a really fun one to grow. I think sometimes when you get a new plant that you're not very familiar with, or you experiment with a new genus, it can sometimes be a little bit stressful because you're trying to kind of figure lots of things out. Whereas I feel like this one is resilient enough to let you know where it's at, and just, yeah, as I say, a brilliant beginner Alocasia that is a little bit more unusual. And then this next one has the weirdest Latin name, so I will have to put it on the screen, but it's a Myrtillocactus geometricans, and then it's something like Fakuro Curzin Bocco or something. I can never remember exactly what it is. but it is commonly known for obvious reasons as the Booby Cactus, and mine's growing very happily in a little booby pot that I also made, which is quite fun. But this is a plant that was on my wish list for such a long time, and I finally got it a few months ago, and it is just making me so, so, so happy. And if you are the sort of plant person that really likes having plants but doesn't like doing a huge amount to them in order to keep them happy, then this is the plant for you. I always say, if you are the kind of plant parent that really loves to be doing lots of stuff, like you like to be watering lots and you like to be loving your plants a lot, then probably be like either steer clear or be very careful with cacti and succulents in the early days, because these ones really don't need much doing to them at all. I always say it when you've got, I mean, if you're that sort of person or you've got quite a big collection like me, I really love having some plants that I don't have to do much to and I can just walk away from and be like, I'll see you in a few months, and then come back and be like, oh, what's been going on? Because this one, I literally, as I say, I got it a few months ago and I think I've watered it once or twice in my time of owning it so far. And obviously, as you can tell, it is not the best time of year to be growing cacti and succulents without a grow light. And I actually don't have this one under a grow light at the moment. I have just got it over by this window. But ideally, if you would like to keep them in a state of constant growth, then this one absolutely loves bright, bright light, and it can absolutely be acclimated to take full sun as well. If you look at its natural habitat, it does commonly grow in full sun. So I could put this one under a grow light. The honest truth is that I'm just a little bit out of space in my grow light zones at the moment, but maybe I need to have a bit of a shift up. But yeah, again, it doesn't require high levels of humidity. In fact, it can be grown in like little to, I was gonna say no humidity, in very, very low levels of humidity, and it's not gonna kick up a fuss whatsoever. The only downfalls with this plant will very likely be not enough light and overwatering, as I say. So this is one to be a little bit tentative about if you are fairly new to plants, but at the same time, get it, leave it alone, put it in a nice spot, and I can guarantee it will do well. I also always say, I mean, I say it with all of my plants, but particularly with cacti and succulents, if you're not sure if they're ready for a drink, there's never, or very rarely, is there ever going to be any harm in going away and leaving it for at least a few days, coming back and checking again. I actually wait for this one to completely dry out to the point of being bone dry before I water it again, and I just stick my finger down to the soil and feel, and that works really, really well for me. But yeah, if you're looking to, like, I know we're coming up to Christmas, I was going to say, if you're looking to gift a plant to someone, I feel like this is just a really cute one, and it's a really unusual one, and I feel like most plant parents, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like most people would appreciate it because it's just a bit of fun and it's lovely. And then this next one's one that seems to really divide people. It's a bit of a Marmite plant, but it is the Philodendron Tortum. And I've said it in so many of my videos before, but I am absolutely massive on texture in plants. I think because I'm not a huge one for colourful houseplants, like I do quite like the majority of my plants to be green. I just really appreciate looking at a green space and being able to just see, like, yeah, different textures and different vibes from plants. And this one really, really gives me that. And oh my God, has this been easy? Like, I appreciate the fact that I'm probably not bringing out the best in this plant at the moment, but as I've just said, I don't have a huge amount of space to be able to give every single plant the optimum conditions. This one has just proven how resilient and tolerant it is, whilst also still giving me beautiful, beautiful growth, because this one lives over in my kitchen at the moment, and that is a very low light spot. Ideally, this plant would be growing in kind of upper end of medium to bright and direct light. However, as I say, I currently don't have the space to be able to do that, and this one is still putting out beautiful, beautiful growth. I also chopped it back a little while ago to take some cuttings to the plant swap, and it's just, as I say, it's just burst back into life, and I almost didn't expect it. There's a lot of philodendrons that wouldn't. But the thing I also really like about this one is that it is what's known as a self-heading philodendron. If you look at the base of it, you can see all of its growth is quite, oh, my mushrooms are getting in the way, is quite condensed and compact. And that does just mean that it grows much bushier as opposed to kind of upright and vining. Again, if you do grow this plant in higher levels of light, then it is going to be a little bit more spread out. It is going to kind of let itself, I was going to say let itself go a little bit more. So yeah, when I've got a little bit more space to play with, I am excited to up this one's light and really bring out the best in it. But this one I am also currently growing, just to make life even easier, I am currently growing in semi-hydro. And again, there's a lot of philodendrons that I have found aren't a massive fan of semi-hydro growing, but I've just got it in pon, and then I keep a little reservoir of water at the bottom at all times. It does dry out now and again, and then I just top it up. And again, the plant has never complained. And I put it in semi-hydro purely because I was just like getting lots of things into semi-hydro about 6 months ago, and I was like, let's see how this one does. But it was also doing absolutely fine in soil. So yeah, I would say if you're able to offer this plant bright and direct light, then fantastic. But if you're not able to provide those conditions as well, then it is not one that you should rule out from having in your collection. But yeah, I just think it's really weird, really cool, and it's just one that I can't imagine not having in my collection now. I just love it so much. And then I know how trendy Anthuriums are at the moment, and I also know how difficult some of them can be to take care of, because I am still very much kind of playing about with the genus and getting to know certain types and figuring things out. But one that I would absolutely recommend if you're looking for something, again, a little bit more unusual is, and I was going to do them both as different types, but I was like, why not include the hybrid? I was going to say the Crystallinum magnificum, which is what this hybrid is. It is such a beautiful hybrid. As I say, both the Crystallinum and the Magnificum, in my experience, are two really great velvet leaf Anthuriums if you're just kind of like looking to experiment and you're not familiar with the genus. Those are two really good ones to start with. But yeah, hybrid Anthuriums typically, not always, but typically are a little bit hardier than just like the parent plants alone. And this typically goes for hybrids across most genuses. I know I've said it before with things like philodendron and stuff like that. I just think that the stronger gene pool means that typically they're a little bit more resilient and not as, I don't know, not as sensitive as the purebred plants. But this one has just been an absolute doddle, and as you can see, it's sizing up really beautifully. And I kind of look at this plant, and although I'm so happy it is, I'm like, I feel like I don't deserve it to be sizing up this much, because I'm really not doing much to it at all. I also left it very annoyingly up against a grow light bar the other week, and as you can see, it has just caught. I was just having a rearrange, moving some stuff about, and I left it by the grow light and it scorched. So be wary of that. But this is one that actually, when it put out this leaf here, was growing in kind of like medium light conditions. It isn't a plant that requires like ridiculously high levels of light. Again, it was just behind the TV here before I had this grow light bar, so kind of low to medium light. I saw it starting to put out this leaf and I was like, oh, I feel like I should give it some more light, and that's when I moved it closer to the window. But it's probably about a metre back now, so I would say it's getting the upper end of medium light currently, and it's just growing beautifully. And this is one that I have tried growing in a few different ways, and there are quite a few ways that I would say are effective when it comes to growing this plant. But currently I've got it in pretty much, like, I would say 90% tree fern fibre and 10% soil mix. That's kind of what it looks like. And it was more of just an experiment, to be honest, because as I say, I have been playing about with the genus quite a lot and just testing things and seeing what works, what doesn't. I've actually got a little baby Crystallinum just behind me here. And this one is growing how I was showing you earlier with the begonia. It's got no drainage on the bottom and then it's got a soil mix on top. And I am finding that to be a really effective way of growing Anthurium. So I will probably actually transfer this one into that way of growing at some point. But yeah, it is just one that, besides the little scorch here, has really not given me any grief. It feels like, I don't know, the reward I'm getting from growing this plant for the amount of work I'm putting in, like I said, it almost feels undeserved, because it is just one that kind of keeps itself happy. And it's so lovely to find plants like this, because I'm such a massive fan of the dark, kind of the dark velvety glossy leaves with the white veination. But then there are certain types of Anthurium, like for example the Regal and the Borocquianum, that I have struggled with so much. So yeah, when you find one like this that just continues to look beautiful and makes you feel like a wonderful plant parent. It's a really lovely thing. So yeah, if I was starting out with Anthuriums again, this is definitely one that I would add to my collection early on. Yeah, I've actually only had this one, I think for about a year now, and I kind of wish I got it sooner. So yeah. And then I've brought two over to show you for this next one because I got one of them very recently, but it is the Hoya Callistophylla. But I got this one from Grow Tropicals literally like a week and a half ago, and it's the Callistophylla Black Cat, which is very similar to the Callistophylla, but it's just got slightly more, like slightly darker, more, cannot think of the way to describe it, like the veination bleeds a little bit more. Like I'll hold them side by side so you can see what I mean. But yeah, this one is just more dramatic, and to be honest, I'm actually loving this one so much at the moment. So I just thought I would bring them both over and I could talk about both of them. But Hoyas as a genus on the whole are really, really fantastic ones if you're wanting something a little bit different and you're looking to kind of expand into more like unusual rare plants. There are so many amazing different types of Hoya to choose from as well. But I have just found the Callistophylla to be such a rewarding and very, very easy plant to grow, and one that's been quicker for me than a lot of other species within the genus. I've got some Hoyas that will give you like a leaf a year, if that, whereas the Callistophylla here, although it doesn't look like much, I have taken so many cuttings of this plant in my time of owning it, and it does just seem to grow quite quickly when you keep it in the right conditions. So again, this is a plant that is very, very, very adaptable, and you can grow it in lower levels of light. However, as I say, if you want to really bring out the best in this plant and you want to get it growing nice and quickly, bright and direct light to even some direct sun is absolutely fine for Hoyas. I've got lots of my Hoyas kind of scattered around my flat, growing in different places, and I find that my ones in the cabinet grow like weeds. Like I've got my grow cabinet next to me that's obviously got grow lights in there, and the ones under the grow lights grow so fast. The ones by the window grow pretty fast as well. At this time of year, not so much, but for the rest of the year when it is a little bit lighter, they do. But then I've just got some like not even under grow lights, like I've got a couple in my kitchen, I've got some just here, there and everywhere. And although they do give me growth, it's just much slower. So it's not to say if you don't have a really bright home or you don't have grow lights, then you can't grow this plant. But yeah, as I say, I would recommend slightly higher conditions. But yet again, as you will see, since I've potted up the Callistophylla, the black cat, I have again got it into the same way of growing. And this is just, I said at the beginning, I know I get obsessed about certain things, and this is currently the way of growing I am really obsessed with, and I'm finding it so easy and so low maintenance. And it's just allowing me to take care of my plants, I think, in a more efficient way. I'm not saying I'm gonna like transfer them all to this way of growing, and there's some types that like it more than others. But again, for Hoyas, I have found it to be really, really effective. And I also just think it looks quite nice as well. Like I feel like it almost looks like a cool little science experiment. You know, when you used to get those, like the different layers of sand and stuff, and you could just kind of see all the layers. I don't know. I love it. I really love it. So yeah, as I say, it's early days with the Callistophylla black cat, so I'll let you know how I get on with it. But assuming it's as easy as the standard Callistophylla, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be, then yeah, I think it'll be fine. But yeah, again, it's one that I really wish when I was first getting into more unusual plants, it's one I wish I knew about, because I would have loved to have owned this plant sooner. But yeah, for the time being, it is just one that's in my collection and I don't have to worry about, which, as I say, is really, really nice. And then this one is another one that is a favourite in my whole collection. I absolutely love this one, and it is my monkey tail cactus, which I'm pretty sure is some type of Cleistocactus, but I can't remember the full name, so again, I will put it on the screen. But this one I got as very small cuttings from plants that had kind of like broken when I went to Malvern, the RHS Malvern Festival over the summer, and they were teeny tiny, and I transferred them to this pot and I was like, oh god, I was like, is that going to be okay? And they have grown so quickly. I also accidentally snapped a couple of bits at the bottom, but as you can see, it's starting to put out new growth again already, and that's growth this time of year as well. And this is another one that I don't have under grow lights or anything like that. As I said about the Booby Cactus that I spoke about before, the Matillo cactus, if you are a plant parent, and again, I just need to keep stressing this, if you are a plant parent that really wants to care for your plants a lot and you want to be doing lots of watering and stuff like that, then steer clear of cacti and succulents, or at least be very, very, very careful, because again, this is one that I water maybe once a month, if that. Sometimes at this time of year, I watered this one the other day, but I'm trying to think when the last time was I watered it before then. Maybe a month and a half or 2 months ago. It is one that I wait for to get completely bone dry again before I go ahead and water it. And again, I'm also growing this one in terracotta, which in fact is a really good tip if you like cacti and succulents but you're worried about overwatering. If you grow them in terracotta, because it is a porous material, it essentially helps to draw some of the moisture out of the soil, meaning that if you do go a little bit overboard, and you should still be very, very careful about it, but if you do go a little bit overboard from time to time, it's more likely to be able to kind of suck the water out and draw, fungus nut, draw the water from the roots of your plant, if that makes sense. But this is a jungle cactus as well, so it does do quite well in higher levels of humidity. It doesn't need them. It's not going to give you too much grief if it doesn't get super high levels of humidity, but it is one that does like very high levels of light, and I don't think this one would do particularly well if you were to grow it in lower levels of light. So if you don't have a spot that gets really good light, I probably wouldn't, just for your own sake and the plant's sake, I probably wouldn't go for this type of plant. I grow mine right up in my south-facing window. Currently, again, at this time of year, it doesn't get a lot of direct sun, but that is just the nature of the British weather. But yeah, it's still growing well, and I could introduce a grow light. I probably should introduce a grow light, in fact, but for the time being it's slowed down in its growth a little bit, but I know that will kick back in when it gets to summer. So yeah, it's just a weird and wonderful, really cool plant. Again, like I say, texture, I love the texture of this plant so much. But yeah, it's just one that I am really, really enjoying growing. And then bringing this one over to show you nowadays is really quite difficult because it's so big, but this is my Anthurium Pallidiflorum. And I actually noticed when I took this one down, because I've got it hanging in the window, but when I took this one down to show you it, something very exciting is happening. Not only is it starting to give me another new leaf, which I reckon is probably going to be even bigger than the last one, it's also, see if I might need to put some clips in, but it's also got a little inflorescence in there. It hasn't opened yet, but I'm definitely going to harvest some pollen from this plant and have a go with some pollination, because this is a type of Anthurium that I have never ever pollinated before. It's potentially, in fact, I think it goes without saying, it is my favourite Anthurium. I just adore this one. I don't know much about hybridization in it either, but that is something that I'm very keen to play about with. But when it comes to this as a beginner plant, this is such a hardy Anthurium. I got this one just under a year ago at the beginning. I think I got it at the end of January, in fact, this year. So yeah, about 9 or 10 months ago now. And it was really quite a small plant when I got it. And now it is giving me leaves. Like this one here is, I think, over 1 meter long, which is just crazy. So it's very quick to grow. It's very quick to size up. And it's just so beautiful, and it's so different to anything else that I own. So I am absolutely obsessed with it. I love it so much. And I'm growing mine, again, I'm growing mine in the window, so it's getting really good light. It's getting bright indirect light all day round. It is one that can be okay growing in slightly lower levels of light, but in my experience, you're probably not going to get the same level of growth, the same scale of growth, the speed of growth, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I would say medium light to bright and direct light, but the higher the light, the better the growth. Again, it doesn't need any special conditions when it comes to humidity. And although it does like to be left quite damp in its substrate, what I found the best thing to do is use a really like epiphytic chunky mix. So again, lots of bark, lots of moss, and just kind of water it through roughly once a week when the top layer feels quite dry. That's been the best way that I've found to do things. I've never, I don't know, I feel like I've maybe got it wrong a few times, but the plant has never complained. It doesn't seem to be one that's particularly susceptible to root rot. It's just an all-round wonderful plant. And again, as I say, texture, it is just so gorgeous. And then I feel like this one again is probably a little bit of a Marmite plant, but it is the Hoya Callistophylla Sumatra. And I don't think you would describe this plant as pretty, but rather kind of weirdly prehistoric. Do you know what I mean? It almost doesn't look like it's from the world we live in today, but it is such a cool Hoya. And the thing that I am so excited about with this one is that when it flowers, obviously Hoya blooms can be absolutely amazing, but this one's flowers, I'll try and find some pictures and put them on the screen somewhere, but their blooms are actually furry like the leaves, because if you feel the leaves, they're kind of like, they've got a fuzz about them, and it doesn't really show up that well on camera, but they're kind of like I really don't know. They don't feel like your typical plant leaves, and it's just one that I like. I don't know. I just really, really like this plant. It makes me really happy. And one of the things that I really love about having plants is having a varied collection. I really like having things that are a little bit different and do kind of make people go, oh my God, what's that? And this is definitely one of those plants. And the fact that it is so easy to care for is just a bonus. As I've already said, Hoyas typically are, not always, there's a couple that I could name, I'm looking at one in fact, there's a couple that are a little bit difficult, but this one has just been such a dream. Like, again, keep it in my window shelves. It could be in lower light and has been in lower light in my time of owning it as well, and it's been absolutely fine. But as you can see, it's putting out lots and lots of new growth. I've given it a trellis to climb around, so hopefully once it starts to tendril, it will start to give me some new leaves as well. My hope is that at some point it will go all the way around and be really full and bushy and lovely. But yeah, for the time being, it's a little bit sparse. But this one is growing again in a really, really chunky mix. This is, I'm actually struggling to see, but I would have thought, based on what I typically grow Hoyas in, this is just kind of bark and again a little bit of soil. You can see it's like really, really, really chunky. And again, this just mimics the plant's natural habitat. They are epiphytic plants, so it just helps them to grow happily in the way that they would be in nature. But yeah, apart from that, there is nothing specialised that I do in order to keep this plant happy. It isn't the fastest grower in the entire world. Again, as I say, if you up a Hoya's light, typically you are going to produce more growth in the plant, but it is one that can kind of be adaptable to lots of different conditions. But yeah, it's just such an awesome one, and it is a joy to grow. And then finally, a plant that doesn't get enough credit in my opinion is the Rhaphidophora Foraminifera. And I think Rhaphidophora as a genus is just a really varied, really unusual, really cool genus. There are so many I could speak about in this video. But the Foraminifera is one that, as I say, you just don't see about that much, and I don't know why. I got this one as a one-leaf cutting at the London Plant Swap last year, so probably about 10 months ago now, and in that time it has just given me the most incredible amount of growth, because when I first got it, it looked, I'm trying to show you the little leaf, it looked like that. But the thing with this plant is as it grows and develops and fenestrates, it gets these beautiful little fenestrations close to the main vein. And as you can see in its most recent leaf, those are really starting to come out more. But another thing that I love about this one, because I keep feeling like I want to downsize my plants on moss poles because they just take up so much space and they just have quite a lot of upkeep, to be honest. But this one, although it's growing upwards and its growth is getting a lot bigger, the stem is actually remaining fairly condensed. Like, I'm going to have to put clips in because I know it isn't clear to show you on camera, but look at the aerial roots in the back of the pole. I actually don't think I'm going to need to extend this one for maybe another 2 or 3 leaves, which does actually make it much less maintenance than a lot of other plants. And again, it is just a really, really hardy one. Typically, again, if you want it to size up and you want it to produce these lovely fenestrations, bright and direct light is advised, but it is one, again, that can grow. I've got a massive Rhaphidophora tetrasperma that I'm looking at now going up around my doors, and that one is growing in such low light. It is a genus of plant that can take lower light, but as always, if you want to bring out the best in your plants, bright and direct light for this one is best. Again, no specialized humidity requirements or anything like that, but it will appreciate high levels of humidity. And again, keeping things very low maintenance, I have got this one growing in semi-hydro, and oh my goodness, in fact, I think it's due for a repot. But yeah, I've got this one growing in pon. I've just got a little reservoir of water at the bottom there, and that's how I keep the plants. I don't have to monitor soil or anything like that in that way. I just make sure, obviously, the moss from the moss pole doesn't go all the way down. I just give, oh my God, I've also just noticed an aerial root growing out of the side there. But I give it a little bit of space from the pond to avoid rotting, but that just seems to be working really, really well. It's another plant as well that has absolutely come into contact with plants in my collection that have had pests over my time of owning it, and it hasn't been affected. So it's just all round a great, easy plant that I just honestly cannot rave about enough. So yeah, I would absolutely love to know what some of your suggestions are as well. If you've got unusual plants in your collection and you're like, this one's really easy, please do comment them down below, because I would love to know, and I'm sure people watching this video would love to know as well. But yes, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.
Stay sexy, plant lovers.